Welcome to this video, ladies and gentlemen. This is going to be the first video of a short episode, of a short series, I should say, about the cold steel Leatherneck SF. I'm going to do a couple of videos about this knife. The first one is going to be my honest first impressions and some comparisons. We're really going to talk through this knife from tip to butt, I guess, and in the second video I'm actually going to use it. And in the third video, I will modify this if it survives my testing. Hopefully I don't snap this in half while batoning. So let's talk about the Leatherneck SF. It's obviously a modern interpretation of a very famous World War II fighting knife design. Since the name SF for Semper Fi, Semper Fidelis, always loyal, I guess, if my Latin is not too rusty. I always had a big place in my heart for combat knives, for military style field knives. I was in the military myself. They're very close to my heart for that reason, and I guess I also have a lot of experience with this style of knife. But I also will say I think these are kind of outdated in a modern sense. I think there are better solutions for combat knives these days. But from a heritage perspective, you know, knives with guards and pommel caps, they're really something unique, right? And there are so many of these. You could start your own collection just with this style of knife, because there's so many versions of this. So I don't think, legally speaking, it's an issue for Cold Steel to do this design. I think it's totally fine. Because K-Bar during World War II, of course, was just one of a couple of factories that made this. So immediately you can see this is an modernized interpretation, though. No stacked leather handle, but a rubberized material. The guard has been thickened up quite a bit. You can see my guard is already bent from using, so this is not going to happen as easily with this one. And then instead of a upswept tip, and this probably comes from the background of the K-Bar as a hunting knife before it became a military service knife. So you can do the skinning motion a little bit easier. It also has more belly up here than the Leatherneck. So this is a kind of old school way of doing a clip point, whereas this straight clip is a little bit more modern. Now I will say I like the modern straight clip better for one single reason. You have more control over the tip from the handle because it's closer to the center line, and you can orientate the tip easier. You really know where to point the tip from back here. Now, one thing that they did a little bit better on the K-Bar, though, is that the full thickness of the blade, the 4.3mm blade, runs all the way to the tip via that grind here. So you can see this line right here supports the tip quite a bit. You do not have that on the Leatherneck. The wedge also stops before the tip. I guess it is already pointy enough. So both of these are thin tips, right? These are not, focus please, these are not strong tips, but the K-Bar definitely has an advantage in material thickness here. And also because this one is hollow ground. So we have a flat or saber ground 1095, and this is a hollow ground D2 blade. I'm not really sure, you know, I was always under the impression the Leatherneck was a thicker, more sturdy version of the K-Bar, but it turns out it's not. The blade stock thickness on the K-Bar, like I said, is 4.3mm. On the Leatherneck it's just 4.6mm, so an increase of 0.3mm, not a whole lot. So the toughness here really comes from the guard and the increased tang thickness. So the K-Bar has a very thin, narrow tang. This is all one piece of steel, the blade and the tang, but it's very thin down here. And the Leatherneck tang is almost full width of the blade through the handle. So this is almost like a full tang knife with a guard and a handle over it, right? Instead of a rat tang, I guess, like this one is, or a stick tang, I would guess you call it. So because the width of the tang, the handle is also a lot wider and thicker. And And quite honestly, it's also much shorter, as you can see, right? Quite honestly, the longer, thinner handle on the K-bar fits my hand a lot better, whereas this shorter, stubbier handle probably fits Lynn Thompson's hand a little bit better because he also was involved in the designing. And I guess the width comes from the width of the tang. You can see you have flat spots down here, which you don't have on the K-bar. Of course, you can easily modify the leather to have those flat spots. Why are these flat spots really good? Because round handles, they twist and turn, especially in wet, cold, and greasy conditions. So with these flat spots, you can hold the knife a lot more securely and the knife doesn't turn in your hand. One more benefit is because the handle is so short and you have those flat spots, you can reorientate the knife from a standard grip to a reverse grip much easier. I'm not sure if you really need that, but it's a nice thing to have if you are like in a fighting situation, right? Because of these flat spots, you can also orientate the cutting edge nicer, so you have a better edge alignment. So your cutting edge is going to be better aligned with your arm, therefore making slashing, chopping, cutting a lot easier. Now, I still think design-wise the K-bar is the better design because of the supported tip and also because of the ricasso area here that you can use up as a choke-up area for finer cutting. On the Leatherneck, you will run into the cutting edge if you do that. The funny thing is, from back here, from where the guard ends or starts, you are the same distance away to the start of the cutting edge. So from back here, the cutting is going to be the same. But here you can also choke up because the K-bar uses its spaces a little bit better. I guess the guard is thinner, that's also a reason. So design-wise, like from the handle ergonomics, from the choking up and from the tip strength, and also from the flat ground blade, I like the K-bar much better. The K-bar also has a nicer sheath, whether you choose the leather or the Kydex sheath. The Securex sheaths on the cold steels, they have a lot of issues is what I noticed. Material-wise, they're really good. I like the material, I like the system back here with not taking a belt off. You can also replace the carrying system, that's all good, but in terms of fitment, the sheath is too tight. And I've had this issue multiple times. I've even had cold steel knives where the knife wouldn't even go into the sheath because the sheath was too tight. So this one is going to scratch up the blade real good, especially if it's going to be slightly dirty. So I don't like the sheath as much. So even though these knives are a lot cheaper, they are usually quite often on sale for like 70 bucks. They typically cost 100, like the K-bar, but they are often on sales for 70 bucks. You just have to wait a little bit. But if you have to reinvest in a new sheath, that's also gonna add some costs. You can of course buy a K-bar sheath, they're not very expensive. Even though I didn't found one of them recently, I don't think they're that much available anymore. But you can fit the Leatherneck in the leather sheath of the K-bar because of the same blade length. I'm of course not going to do that because the slight bit more material thickness will loosen up the sheath too much for my actual K-bar. So I think a more modern solution for this style of knife would be something like an SRK design. Doesn't have to be an SRK, but something similar. This one has a thicker blade and a better designed handle. Here is nothing that can really go wrong. There's no guard, no pommel. This is a more secure solution. Now, as you can see, I reground my SRK in SK5 to a flat ground because the hollow grind was too thick and not really useful, I think, for outdoor usage. So I'm really excited to see how that thinner blade stock with that thinner hollow grind is going to perform. I think it should cut really well. The concerns, of course, are if it's going to be sturdy enough. You can see the honeycomb texture is really similar on these, but the SRK feels much higher quality and much nicer. This one feels a little bit cheap. So to summarize the first impressions, I think the Leatherneck has good potential. It's a little bit too heavy because of the thick tang. The K-bar has like 10.5 ounces or 300 grams, and this one has 350 grams, which is 12.2 ounces. That's not really that good. I mean, in an outdoor setting, it's going to give you more heftiness, of course, but for a field knife, it's overly heavy, I think. You can find much lighter solutions. And for an outdoor knife, it also lacks the length, heftiness in general, and the grind setup, grind and steel probably. So yeah, I'm not really sure where the Leatherneck fits in quite yet, but we'll see how it performs. I like the design better on the K-bar. I think it's smarter designed. This one has some issues, like I said, with the ricasso, and the handle feels a little bit cheap, and the sheath is not the best. So yeah, mixed feelings about the Leatherneck. I thought it was going to be thicker and sturdier. I didn't expect to have like a thick tang back here, but then a hollow ground D2. So that's it for this video. Maybe we should even talk about the steel real quick though. German D2, that's just, you know, marketing, I guess. The Germans, they typically use the 1.2 379 steel. If you want to look that up, and you can compare these on the Knife Steel apps. It's the same steel, just with slight bit more chromium. No, it's not more stainless for that reason. It's just going to, the chromium is probably going to be in carbide. So I think the heat treatment will play a bigger role than the type of steel where the D2 comes from. The heat treatment and the grind geometry, and typically cold steel is good with heat treatment. So yeah, we'll see how it performs. So that's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in episode 2, hopefully. Goodbye.